Welcome, everybody, to our Anamnesis podcast and series. Today, I am joined by Father Sebastian. Father Sebastian was ordained in 2022, if that's correct, at the cathedral by Archbishop Kirill, and is now serving in Phoenix, and the name of the parish is Holy Archangels. Wonderful.
That is that was current as of about 4 or 5 months ago. So we
Oh,
have recently I've recently started a new parish up in Cornville, Arizona, just outside of Sedona, Arizona, and we've brought in a new priest. Well, not new as in young, but priest from Russia, Father Vadim, now is in Phoenix, has taken over from me there. So we did that transition here a few months ago.
wonderful. And I reached out to Father Sebastian. We share some history. Um, Father Sebastian attended the same undergraduate as me, as Thomas Aquinas College in Santa Paula, California, which is a great books, classical liberal arts college. And, anyways, Father has, you see in the description, I have the link to his YouTube channel, so check that out, subscribe. And Father came up with a really good topic. I'm going to hand it over. We're going to do things a little bit different for this. We're going to switch roles. Father's going to introduce why he's been thinking about this topic. And then Father's going to actually interview rather than me interviewing Father. And so, anyways, take it over, Father.
All right. Well, may the Lord bless. Very glad to be here. Should probably start with a prayer.
Yes, please, Father.
O Heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of Truth, wherever we're present and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us of all impurity and save our souls, O good one. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So I was glad when Father Deacon Ananias reached out to me. I'd actually been planning to reach out to him as well. And so it worked out really good. And, just to give a brief background as to why, I wanted to discuss this question with him. So I did attend Thomas Aquinas College, and as I've mentioned elsewhere, I did not graduate from there. I was not scholastically up to the task at the time. I was just into all kinds of other things, and as I've mentioned elsewhere, I've been very open about it. I'm incredibly ADHD, and I'm not. I have my own process of learning. Yeah, a very different process of learning, and I know there's different grades and different solutions that people come up. There's certainly I guess ironically, I think they say something like 75% of CEOs of companies are all have ADHD. So there's a lot you can do with it. It of course manifests in different ways for different people. And for me, I just had a hard time with the readings. I was always able to participate just fine in the discussions, but and if I'm going to be completely honest, probably BS my way through a few of them that I hadn't been able to read. So, you know. At the time I was a very different place than I am now, of course. And but anyway,
Were you
what I noticed
Father?
was
Were you
no,
Orthodox
no,
at the
no,
time?
no,
So
no,
you
no.
were
I was
like
actually
me.
even.
I was
Mhm.
Protestant at the time.
I was modern Catholic. I was Novus Ordo Catholic, and Thomas Aquinas College actually, sort of ironically enough, is what began my journey, honestly, through Catholic, because I went initially into traditional Catholicism. It was TAC that led me, honestly, to that, because it was the first place. To be fair, just to speak a little bit about that place, it's a very, very different school. In its own way, it's very, very good. And it was the first time that I had seen, for example, they did the Novus Ordo there, but it was a Latin Novus Ordo at the time. I don't know how they do now, but it was not Tridentine. It wasn't the Tridentine Mass. It was a Novus Ordo Mass in Latin, and it was the first time that it ever experienced the Mass being performed with, I would call it due reverence. Everybody there was very much attuned to what was going on, much more so than you typically have in the Novus Ordo. So that was kind of what led me down that journey. It took 2 decades or whatever to see it through to fulfillment, but that was the beginning stage. But in any case, what I gained from from Thomas Aquinas College um, in the time, and there was a lot of other circumstances. I was in the Marine Corps, and I got pulled out mid semester to go for Desert Shield and Storm, and so my there were some other factors involved that kind of messed me up. And then when I came back, I just not in like a PTSD sense, but just in terms of my life, I just wasn't really into it anymore. It just my mind and that was elsewhere. So anyway, but what I did gain from that, and this is kind of the beginning part of this question, is I gained an appreciation for and a love for the truth. Even in the short time, I could say that I was there, it was that. And the second thing I gained is I learned the philosophical language. I learned, how to read Aquinas and Source, for example, and by extension, the other church fathers too, to some degree. And so I took that with me, and essentially just began a lifetime of self exploration, of study. I bought all the books and I just went through them, and I learned best on my own anyway. Typically, I just like to have a different process of learning, and that just worked well for me. And as a Catholic, that was a primary point of emphasis for me through all those years until I converted to Orthodoxy. And when I came to Orthodoxy, for anybody who's seen the Roots video that I did, my whole world and really worldview shifted, and these things became less important, at least immediately significant for me. I was more focused on trying to learn the faith and live the faith, and I think that was a natural process. But what what I noticed, which was interesting, is when I came into now to start having my own ministry, I see value. I think, as Orthodox Christians, because we don't emphasize natural reason to the degree that the Catholics do, because of course that's based on our anthropology, right? For the Western mindset, the rational mind, essentially the rational intellect, is the highest part of man. And that explains why they're so academic and so scholastic. But for we as Orthodox, the noetic intellect would be the highest part for us. And so it's a very different emphasis. We don't have the same priorities, as you could say. But anyway, all that is to say that despite that, I do believe that nothing has changed insofar as that I think reason has its place. It is certainly subservient to higher things, but insofar as being able to understand the why of what we do, I think philosophy is incredibly valuable for that. And that's why I've incorporated into my channel is to give the rational foundation for a lot of why we believe what we believe and what we do what we do. Now, once again, not to confound the two. Okay, rational faith is not faith. It is not spiritual faith. Okay, to be clear, these are two different things. But the rational faith, especially for our children, we're trying to educate our children, those in positions of authority, obviously teachers, priests, we have to be able, when somebody comes to us with a question, we have to be able to give them an answer that is going to be satisfying to them where they are at that place, right? Once again, once you come in, personally, these things don't matter to me personally. Like, I don't need to go through these things anymore for my own sake. But for the sake of others who come to me, I want to be able to show that our faith is also reasonable, right? And so that's the value there. But what I was really strange, so this is come into the question part now. What I was kind of amazed when I sort of, I guess you could say, walked out of that world. I bought my books, kind of went in, I lived my life. I mean, most of my life at that point was revolved around doing things related to the warrior life. I spent 7 years working in Afghanistan. I mean, I did a bunch of different things. I was very much focused on other things. But in the background, in my spare time, my hobbies were philosophy and science and, once again, growing in depth of understanding on things, not just doing, but also understanding what it is, the things that I'm doing. But I wasn't very much involved in that world. And so now with my ministry, I come back in, and what I'm finding is that whole landscape has really changed. And what I mean by this is that back in the early 90s, we're going to say, to give timelines to things, in the early 90s, you had things like virtue. My channel is really going to focus primarily on virtue. It's called Truth and Practice because it's applied, right? It's applied philosophy and theology. So we're really, right now, most of the videos I've posted is I'm laying groundwork, right? So that when I go and start talking about the applications of these things, I have the base to draw from in discussing them. But what's kind of blown my mind is that the whole concept of virtue is just simply almost gone out of the lexicon. And for those people who I've talked to, my parishioners and stuff that have come in, and when I ask them, well, what, we have conversations about this, they don't even know what it means to them. Their concept of it, one person called it nebbish. It's just this kind of weak. Oh, somebody's virtuous. It means that they're weak, which of course is the very opposite, like direct opposite, right?
Mhm.
Virtue for virile, right? For manly. I mean, and so there was books, if you recall, in the '90s. I don't know how old. I'm not asking you to reveal that, but I'm in my 50s, so I'm a Gen Xer, and I remember in the '80s, for example, late '80s, you had William Bennett's The Book of Virtues, right? We have that book for read to our kids, all the fairy tales and stuff. You had Peter Kraft. He
Yeah.
was a big player on campuses, and you had a bunch of there was a movement. One of my parishioners, one of my readers from Holy Archangels, went to one of the I can't remember which one it was, Yale or something, and his professors were steeped in scholastic philosophy, and they taught that to him. And so there was a movement that was present at that time, and it seems to have died out as I start looking at books. I've been looking. I'm writing some books, and I was looking for titles. I thought about, something about virtue, and I was blown away that you can't even find anything really. It's mostly, like maybe machine ethics or something, or business ethics. There's nothing that really applies to virtue. And so the last piece that I'll add to this is that in my own channel, I have different series that I do, and one of them is specifically on like the nature of truth. And it is by far my least popular series. Like my other videos, I mean, I have videos that 10x literally, and I'm a small channel. I've only been at this for about 4.5 months. Okay, so I'm a new startup here, and I have my practical videos, the few that I've already done, they will literally 10x my videos on the nature of truth, which is fascinating, and I have certain theories as to why I think that is. But the reason we're here is because I want to hear from you, because you've been, I guess, around. You've been in academia. You've been around these circles. You've been running in these circles, and I'm curious to get number one, what your perspective is, and as to what happened, and ultimately why it changed.
Yeah. Um, I will date myself. I turn 48 tomorrow.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
and I was thinking tomorrow's a weird day. So on the new calendar, I'm old calendar, but on the new calendar, it's the
Mm-hmm.
Dormition.
Mm-hmm.
We have Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You have the new bishop in the OCA, Diocese of the West, being made bishop tomorrow. So
He was my dogmatic
yeah, he's great.
theology professor from Jordanville. Yeah, I know him. I know him well.
Yeah,
So
Father
from Utah.
Vasily
Mm-hmm.
Vitali. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of things happening tomorrow. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a strange, going from Thomas Aquinas College, and I had a similar experience. It was there that I got into the theological debates. We had my roommate and I had the shaft set of the Church Fathers, and
Mm-hmm.
between study time, I would knock on the doors of fellow students and bring them out to debate why the papacy was wrong. And so I really worked
The
I
comments. Did they set up the commons area and all? Is that how they were set up with the dorms? You had the rooms and the commons and all that in
Yeah.
the dorms. Yeah, that was a great arrangement, by the way.
Yeah, it was really great that one of the great things about Thomas Aquinas College is the great conversations didn't end just in the classroom. It carried out
Yeah.
into the meals, all the way through the nights in the dorms and stuff. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. I was just like, I love this. um, but I had made up my mind, I think, that I was like, well, no, I'm not going to. When I first went there, I was open to becoming Roman Catholic. There is where I was. There was a priest, Father Paul Weisman, who would come visit some of the Orthodox students, and it was there that,
I know him. Yeah, he's from Oxnard. Yeah,
yeah,
when I would go visit, my family still lives in Ventura, and
yeah,
he's the priest that I would visit when I would go to visit them. So yes, I know him. Yeah, he's retired now, but
he's retired. He's in Texas now, and
hmm
I knew him prior to going there because we were part of a philosophical group in
hmm.
Orange County, California. He would come down. And so it was nice to see him. It's when I first started attending liturgies. I attended Thomas Aquinas College from 1999 to 2003.
Okay.
And then, so the ethos there obviously is very different. Like you said, it's something I really appreciated. People believed sincerely in the objectivity of truth, and they led their
Definitely.
lives that way.
Hmm.
And when I went to grad school, I did my master's with another TAC grad um, who was my roommate when we were in Ireland. We went to Ireland, went to University College Dublin, and did our master's and PhD. He was in the PhD. So after I finished my master's, I then went into the PhD, and then he ended up transferring at the end to Trinity, which was our kind of sister. We had kind of joined programs so you could take classes from both.
Hmm.
And so um, it was a culture shock. Ireland, and let's see, and I was there from 2004 to December 2011 doing my grad work, and it was extremely secular and hostile, not only in academia, but the general population too. They had all the priest scandals in the Roman Catholic
Hmm.
Church,
That's right.
and they wanted nothing to do with religion. They were very progressive in terms of politics and morality and hostile to Christianity. So it was very difficult and lonely to
Hmm.
kind of be in that environment. There were some Catholic professors, and they were good. There were
Hmm.
people who still believed in objectivity and the truth. And so they kind of helped me. One of them was a Roman Catholic priest who wrote letters of recommendation for me, or even wrote a letter of recommendation for me to go to seminary at St. Vlad's. And he put in there the exact same thing. The environment towards Christianity, the attitude in Ireland is extremely hostile, and yet he preserved the faith. He held on
Hmm.
to kind of truth. And I think
Yeah, it's good.
in some sense, it was an advantage. It's
Hmm.
like kind of like Soren Kierkegaard. One of his criticisms is that Christianity is that it just became a cultural phenomenon at the time,
Hmm.
and that nobody, truth requires sacrifice.
Hmm. Hmm.
It means something, and we know this just in life in general, and speaking in terms of like virtue. Um, these things don't matter when things are easy. We don't know who
Hmm.
people are when life's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we don't know how committed somebody is, and you can't acquire the virtues through an easy life. And so I do appreciate that it was extremely difficult and hostile towards me, that that pushed me to really latch on to that and kind of find my way through there and become more than what I was when I entered in. So I do appreciate that, and I can talk a little bit about um, both the culture and academia, because they're kind of mirrors of each other, right?
Hmm.
In
Oh yeah.
some sense,
Yeah.
academia, I'm in it. I'll tell you, it's a brainwashing machine.
Mm. Yeah.
It
Seems to start
is,
it.
and that doesn't mean every professor isn't good, or something. There aren't any good
Yeah.
professors or something like that. But it's rare. It's rare to find. The general kind of ethos of academia
Hmm.
is there's a book by one of my mentors, the late Tristram Engelhart, Reader Engelhart, and his last book was After God. And the reason
Mm.
why he named it that is because modernity was an attack on Christianity.
Hmm.
Postmodernity is a rejection of God entirely.
Hmm.
And we're living in the afterbirth of those kind of rebellions and philosophical movements that obviously start in academia, but also uh, affect the culture. the general culture, we live in a it's stripped away of any resemblance of anything theistic, let alone Christian
Hmm.
whatsoever. And you're going to find
Hmm.
that in academia. And one of the
Hmm.
things that I do appreciate about Thomas Aquinas College, and anybody that does a general kind of study of the history of philosophy in chronology, right? That's what we did. You don't just
Hmm.
jump into modernity.
Right.
You don't just
Right.
choose your classes. It's a great conversation. So you start with the
Yeah.
beginnings, right?
Yep. Yep.
And what was so beneficial about that is you can connect the dots. Now, I don't always like Aquinas, but sometimes he has some good lines, one-liners. And
Yeah.
he says a small mistake in the beginning ends up being a big mistake later. And you can see that when you study the history of philosophy and the
Hmm.
history of the great ideas is this person went wrong here. It didn't seem like that big of a deal, but then the next person and the next one and the next one, and then till you're in modernity and then post-modernity. And so you can trace these things out after you kind of do a historical study of this, be like, how did we get here? I know exactly how we got here. I know who
Hmm.
influenced who, and I think
Hmm.
that's really crucial. And I would say that it's not just a, a rejection of religion. I think there are philosophical mistakes. Now, as Orthodox, one of the things that I and other Orthodox professors, one person that's really good at this is Dr. Nathan Jacobs.
Hmm.
And we when I say the West, I don't mean a geographical location or the things of the culture and stuff like that. When I mean West, there seemed to be a specific philosophical thought experiment
Hmm.
and an attitude towards reason. And that's what Metropolitan John Zizulus says Greek ontologism.
Hmm.
This, their first principles um, is an essence, the one, or the good, or something like this. In Neoplatonic terms, it's not personal. It's not a person.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and our orthotheology is not to start with God as kind of an essence or generic monad or something like this,
Hmm.
but to start with a person. The psalmist says God is the Lord who has revealed himself to
Hmm.
us. And we start with that in all of our, and it makes a difference. People may think like, well, why can't we just start with a kind of the Greek um, conception of God? And I love this line from Pascal: the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of philosophers.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
I mean, think about this. Dr. Garby had interviewed, and I can't remember the bishop, but supposedly, um, I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Porphyry that he was? What year was Porphyry? Let me look up, make sure I have the right Porphyry. The Phoenician, isn't that his name? Phoenician.
Think so.
Um, yeah. 234 BC. I guess he was having a dialogue with Orthodox bishop, and he says something really profound. He says the question isn't um, what is God, but who is Lord? Because you know, the one, or being itself, this kind of essences aren't lords.
No.
The fact that everything is dependent on, that's not what a lord is. A lord is a personal attribute, right? He gives command. Essences don't give commands. um, Essences don't love, right? It's a person who has an essence that loves. And
So my professor, yeah, my professor. So we did have at Jordanville, we actually had Byzantine philosophy. It's the only seminary I'm aware of. Maybe I'm not sure about the Greeks. Yeah, but they of all like Saint Tikhon, Saint Vlad's, all the Russian based, they literally have that. And our professor, I'm going to try to get him on as well. He is absolutely amazing, and he talks a lot about this. He talked a lot about this specific point, and but one element that comes out of that, like which is one of the kind of once again applications of that, is that you see how um, the God of the ancients, right? And you compare that, right, to the God of Christianity. And, the God of the ancients is sort of disinterested. Maybe he wants to, like,
yeah,
people are his playthings, right? And the Greek, the great epic poems and all that. I mean, you see that kind of tendency. And in philosophy, there's this great imperson. There's a lack of personability, right? And you see, I think, a return to that, right? I think it's societally. This is kind of one of the places I want to go. Is we're seeing. I just did a video on, the problems of Stoicism, and how it's returning.
hmm
And not that everything in there is bad. There's of course some good things as well, but there's a problem there. It's when reason is the height of things, rather than God being being the height of reality that determines, right, that determines everything. That's going to alter your worldview. It's going to alter the way you see other human
yes,
beings, right?
absolutely.
So anyway, just
And
to add that in.
so I think this is where the mistake begins. So you can be entirely Western and appreciate all the things that the West, there's some great stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
still be Eastern. What I mean is there's a
Yes.
mindset, and that's to put
Mm-hmm.
personhood first, and specifically this notion of what it means to know. So
Mm-hmm.
when we look at the fathers, when we look at the apostles in scripture, to know is always personal, immediate, and incarnational. Scripture says, and he
Mm-hmm.
knew her, right? Like that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean, uh, as my father Russell that I serve with says, it doesn't mean he read her resume. It means they, he says
Right.
it means they knocked boots, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in the East, and you get this with Father Demetrius Staniloy, it's the experience of God. So when we say the
Mm-hmm.
mysteries, the West would interpret that is, oh, we don't know. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mystery. It's like, no, that is knowledge. And you that's the
Yeah.
noetic, but it's experiential. It's
Yep.
not an abstract, um, kind of proposition in your head.
Mm-hmm.
This
Exactly.
analytic, quantitative, propositional abstractionism. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because of the way that they start with putting essence first, they know God here. So knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
everything becomes propositional, abstract, and not experiential. And that
Mm-hmm.
is going to play out and cause more problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the history of philosophy, and so I think that's where can we ultimately trace it back to is, yeah, I mean, think about to if knowledge is to know in a kind of incarnational and an experiential way, then we're moving away from reality. I'm not saying propositions isn't a form of knowledge or something like that, but it's
Right.
secondary, tertiary, right? It's only
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
real, um, and it's only as true, I should say, in as much as the actual imminent, concretized reality is.
Mm-hmm.
So God is not an idea that you reason to; He's a person, and you have a personal encounter with. That's what I'm trying to say. So now, philosophically, in the history of philosophy, what inevitably happens because of that, what I would say is a kind of primary error, is the next person starts to critique that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so on. Um, the big significant change, I think, is modernity. Because what happens is a rejection of real essentialism. That essence is what makes something what it um, is rejected. It's abolished when you get to Descartes. It's
Mm-hmm.
mechanized. So now you've got a further separation. So if you've already had a bit like an original mistake, a separation from reality, you get another one and another one and another. You get further and further away from the real. Is
And would you say that it's also fair to say, because obviously there's a lot of preparatory work to get to Descartes, right? Like nominalism, for example,
yep,
right? Laid probably you could argue maybe that laid the groundwork for Descartes, and it's just each step,
yep.
right? And then one error replaces another error, and like you said, it just compounds.
And then a lot of people don't know this. Nominalism and these moves laid the foundation for Protestantism
Mm-hmm.
and their theories of salvation, penal substitutionary atonement is based on nominalism. And guess what? I hate to tell you, if there's any Protestants out there, St. Paul was not a nominalist.
That's right.
That's the best refutation of penal substitutionary atonement. He wasn't a
There you go.
nominalist.
There you go.
Is so absolutely so something significantly is changing. At that, you get the nominalism with William of Ockham and these other peoples and scholasticism. Then you get modernity. You get a mechanization of nature. So now, what's the real like the epistemic starting point is my own mind, but I'm kind of locked into my own mind. Um, these kind of radical doubts, you know, come up about the external world and these different things, and eventually this leads into people like David Hume. Um, that's basically like, well, you can't have no you all these things because of the prior mistakes. If they're true, you
Mm-hmm.
you can't have all this other stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Then Immanuel Kant comes along, tries to save knowledge. Um, but something that Immanuel Kant does that's important in terms of the history of uh, philosophy is his book, The Prolegomena of Any Future of Metaphysics. Metaphysics is out the door. And you see this in the Critique of Pure Reason, too. These claims about God and reality, whether the universe had a beginning, those are metaphysical claims, and we can't get there. That's a huge change,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the two most fundamental um, things that lead to this kind of death of truth in philosophy are going to be the abolition of essences and the abolition of metaphysics. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of my colleagues, Dr. Bruce Seraphim is his Orthodox name, Foltz, says, is a great quote: such a world offers no inner resistance to manipulation and control, presents no
Mm-hmm.
grain against we ought not to cut. In Heidegger's word, it is a world that has become an inventory or resource. The German word is Bestand. Technical control and consumption. So the death of truth in philosophy really begins here because, for the ancients at least, they had this idea of metaphysics and that there were real natures and essences.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Man is a rational animal, right? They even
Mm-hmm.
had a conception of God, and you'd said all of this is with Aristotle grounded in the virtues too, right? With his
Mm-hmm.
virtue ethics. What it means to be the fulfillment of man is to acquire these virtues and reach eudaimonia, which is it's kind of weird to say
Happiness. Yeah.
happiness, but
Yeah.
it's
Right.
well-being. You like
Right.
a fulfillment of your being is to acquire these, to go beyond that, right? These are the
Mm-hmm.
constraints,
Mm-hmm.
right? About, I'd say, the polis, like what is society supposed to look like? What is man supposed to look like? What is the proper relation to man in the world? What is technology supposed to look like? These things were restraints. They were reality. They were truth. When you abolish that, it's I'm going to read you another one because uh, Nietzsche actually talked about this. Um, it's in the Gay Science, which is really gay, guys. Don't. It's a different. It's actually a good. It's a good. I thought I had it up here. It's the madman, right? Comes in uh the middle of the day with a lantern,
Hmm.
which shows that he's mad.
Okay.
But the Nietzsche's doing a really interesting kind of thing in literature, and it's sort of like the holy fool, right?
Hmm.
It's the madman that actually has to reveal the truth to him in terms of this kind of contrast
Hmm.
that he has to bring a lantern in the day because everybody's blind.
Hmm.
And his message to them is, you killed God. Now what are you going to do? There's no up, down,
Hmm.
like, and he's giving us a social commentary on what society has actually done. It's
Hmm.
abolished essences, it's killed God. There is no restraint anymore. There is no objectivity or truth in a society and culture like that. There's not, where are we going? Where did we come? Like, and so ultimately, this is going to be replaced with power. And I think that's the libido dominandi that's present in our postmodern culture. And I'm saying all this because why don't people care about truth? Because truth is dead, and truth is replaced with power, will to power. It's sociopathy actually, like to manipulate. I mean, think about it. There's
Yeah.
no truth. There's nothing to kind of constraints. It's a form of manipulation, and even Plato realized this, too, with the the sophists were relativists. They're a
Oh yeah,
warning
for sure.
about what's actually going to come, and they were
Hmm.
sociopathic manipulators, semantic sorcerers with words, because truth
Hmm.
is dead. There is no truth.
Yeah. Right.
And so there's just power. Justice is whatever the strong says, Glaucon
You're
comments.
providing the why. That why has this been happening? I mean, the why is obviously the people that, whatever you want to call those people, right? Is people that are moving society, right? And there's all kinds of speculation about who and what they are, but no doubt there are people in the world that want to assume more and more power to themselves,
Yeah,
right? The WEF types, those kind of people in the world who want the world to serve them. They want to accumulate more power, and you have to remove, right, the structures in place that could resist that power in order to assume that power. Which is, I think, everything you're saying on the intellectual side of things. And on a personal level, I mean, I think the only thing that lasts that remains is personal consequence. Like,
yeah,
why don't you have more crime? Things like this, because there's a concern. Oh, the police are going to arrest me.
yes,
People don't, right, when society breaks down at some point, there's a good chance it's going to, of course, right, a good likelihood of that. I mean, what is that world going to look like when a lot of people, maybe a majority, no longer have this understanding that you don't do certain things because it's wrong to do them, period, right? When the societal constraints are gone, what do you think that world's going to look like?
yeah,
All the dystopian, stuff that's out there. I mean, it seems to be, laid out pretty well. Like, there's a good foundation for that. If anyone's just trying to, once again, take care of themselves and not be concerned about anything else. And that's one of the things I'm hoping to do in my ministry, and I'm presuming you're doing in yours, is to hopefully, like, give people something to shake out of that mentality, because of course there's eternal consequences for these things, but there's also, in the world that we have to live in, there are immediate consequences as well. The fact that, like, if you live in a city like San Francisco or Minneapolis, right, where there's just absolute complete crime, there's no punishment for crime a lot of times. All the windows get broken out of your car. Well, now you're the guy that has to live there,
yeah,
and now you have to go, and your insurance premium goes up. You pay out of pocket. You get punished for something you didn't do, and that's literally what society becomes. The criminals run free, and we all bear the consequence.
yeah, exactly. And we have to be able to instill in people. I mean, they're going to start in an infantile state. It's like
Hmm.
children, right? They don't
Hmm.
understand why
Hmm.
virtue. um, is beneficial to them and those around. It's cohesive for a society. I see this with liberal professors. Why do you care about, what harm is, the LGBT community doing to you? It's like huge, like not to me just
Hmm.
personally, but like, they don't, because they have this kind of modern, postmodern kind of presuppositions, they don't see that moral issues that individuals do affect the whole. Not only affect
Hmm.
them and their family members, but it's like it's extremely devastating. So, when we're saying, everybody's free to do whatever they want in the sense of they can do an action, we don't recommend that. Um,
Hmm.
that's not hateful. It's actually, we're the only ones that love the
Hmm.
ones who are promoting the sin. We're trying to tell them, don't do it. It's not good for your soul, for your family, or society. We want the best for these people, uh,
Hmm.
but they can't process that because they don't have these kind of more fundamental concepts. I think is what
Yeah.
you're saying, but we can see it. We can see, um, not only the individual unraveling. The gay community has a huge suicide rate,
Oh yeah.
and mental illnesses. The transgender community and stuff like that, they're all on SSRIs, depressed. Um, and rather than actually going to the cause, it's, oh, because you don't accept us, you see. That's why we feel
Hmm.
bad. Well, there's studies that have come out that in the most accepting areas, like San Francisco and other most quote unquote tolerant, they have the same suicide rates. That's not,
Hmm.
so that's a distraction from the issue. It's no, because it's
Hmm.
an actual moral harm. It's engaged in something. Oh, but they don't believe in objectivity and morality and stuff like that. So they don't even have the kind of hardware to process that when you talk to them, and that's really crazy. Actually, like that's really difficult. So it's not simply a matter of, well, I just disagree with you. They don't understand what's being said.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're running on a total different program. They're running on the modern, postmodern program uh, that is the afterbirth of these bad ideas that
Well,
came
you've
early.
given exactly why, yeah, exactly why I have this series, and I know you've been doing things like this as well. But this is the whole point of that series: is for those who never even thought about such things to be able to give them, to equip them. The military terms of quick and dirty, right? Like if you have to send soldiers into battle, right? You don't have the benefit of the time to go
Yeah.
into the long and in depth, 3 or 4 years of study. Okay, that pipeline for special operations usually is a year and a half to 2 years for these higher level. But your basic soldier, it's a few months, right? And if you look, for example, the difference between like Chinese martial arts, I've studied a lot of martial arts, and Japanese martial arts. The Chinese, they'll spend 20 years, right? And there's a lot of elements there in the Shaolin temples, and they're learning the beauty, and there's a lot that goes into it. But the Japanese, for example, just wanted soldiers, right? And they would, most of the time, a lot of their systems are a lot more simple because they're trying to just prepare them to go out to war, right? And I'm not saying this hasn't happened in other places, but my point is that the normal person isn't used to thinking about these things, and I think our role as clergy, as in terms of my personal ministry, and I think yours as well, is to be able to equip people with some of these notions, right? The proper ideas about things, so that they can start to juxtapose those with what they experience in the world and to see the problem in it and to start to move themselves away from that. Because one of the things I've noticed, one of the things I've spent a lot of time in my catechism program is we go through Saint Justin Popovich's work.
Yeah.
And it's very, very good in terms of teaching, like reorienting the mind and giving the people that go through that a orthodox framework of understanding, of how to view the world, how to see the bill of goods that the world has sold everyone. Because what I think happens if you don't affect that, and this is why I think it's important. This is where I think what we're trying to do actually does matter. Because if you don't correct those mental errors, it's going to impact your approach to orthodoxy. And I think we're seeing this a lot in the church today. A lot of people that come in, they don't leave their baggage at the door, right? I mean, it's not, I'm not blaming them. They just don't know. But I think we have a responsibility to help people understand that it's not just what you do, but it's the why that you do it, right? It's your whole reason for doing things. And that's what good philosophy can grant someone, is the proper understanding of the why. And that's what oftentimes is missing, you know? It doesn't have to be, obviously, you know, in Orthodox, we don't rely, once again, on the rational understanding of that. I think if there's a positive reason here why, for example, this is an unpopular series on my channel, which I'm going to keep doing anyway, by the way, because I think it's important. Okay, like, it's not about just getting clicks; it's about providing content that is going to be helpful to people. But that being said, we obviously have we don't rely on that because we're in a spiritual domain. We should be focusing on spiritual things, and yet we are not disembodied souls, right? We are a composite being of body and soul. Like, the body matters in our worship, and every element of our being, including our rational mind, needs to be oriented towards God. And that's where philosophy, I think, gives us that opportunity. And because it is dead in society, because it has been completely rejected for reasons you've mentioned, and as well as a lot, I think, simple practical ones, that modern philosophy is just a joke. Symbolic logic and all the things that's put in there, and how the fact that, all the universal skepticism, like, why would any sane human being spend 4 years of their life to learn the truth either doesn't exist or is not knowable, right? Like, why? Like, that is insanity, right? Like, why would you do that? Unless
No,
you have a further goal, right?
and no wonder the STEM aspect in academia is like, why are we funding these departments?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what are they
Exactly.
doing over there? But
That's
they got a
right.
legit, and that's in some sense, they got a legitimate critique. Um,
Yeah.
I still, I don't think that it's become. I still think there's still good and that it's salvageable. It's sort of
Yeah.
like, I've talked about this about debate. I have my criticisms of debate
Hmm.
today.
I do too. I do too.
Um, you know, the goodness of debate, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
locate this in antiquity, is exactly this. While society actually were objectivists and believed in truth, and they believed, not only individually but societally, that we should go with the better argument because truth
Hmm.
matters for me
Hmm.
individually, for my soul, and for society is a whole. And I'm
Hmm.
going to read this quote from Sherrard. States it, uh, in destroying the ancient world, which possessed an overriding spiritual orientation or pursuits, he states that modern man created a society that's man-made, not a divine order. It's one, in fact, that represents a projection of the human mind that has cut its links with the divine and with the earth. And insofar as it has any ideals, these are pure temporal and finite concerns, only the terrestrial welfare of its members. So in antiquity, they didn't have that. And so there was something very noble about debate. It
Hmm.
was, and debate is not apologetics or pastoral ministry. You're not trying to win the person over. It's a public affair. So you're trying to see is that this person's ideas are false. Why? Because truth matters. And you presented, God gave us, again, there was an overriding spiritual orientation in the conscious of the ancient that realized they wanted to be divine and they wanted these pursuits. And so, if rationality was a God given gift, then rational arguments that lead to truth should be pursued, for their own sake. And so, debate um, had intrinsic value and worth. Now we live in a post truth society. And I would say a consumerist entertainment society. And by the
Hmm.
way, the other thing too is those listening to the debate were educated. They weren't idiots like we have today.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, and they knew how to be they knew how to be objective and to be rational as opposed to emotive. The problem is it's so hard today to do debates because people they don't think, they just emote, and
Yeah.
now it just becomes and but anyway, yeah, continue,
And it's
please.
all so now we got this
Yeah.
and I have like mixed feelings, it's
Hmm.
because we really didn't have this in the 90s. I'm Gen X too.
Hmm.
Where like people really did debates. Now with the internet and everybody's excited about debates. And I have
Hmm.
mixed feelings about that because I'm like, well, first of all, you're just not um, philosophically trained or educated to probably understand
Exactly.
what the arguments. We live in a
That's the big problem.
consumerist entertainment society,
Yes.
so also the debaters, none of these people are trained formally. Everybody
Exactly.
can create a
Exactly.
debate channel, right, and argue, and then it's just hoorah for my team, put the
It's
jersey
blood
on.
sport. Yeah, it's
It's
blood sport. It's
and
just it's just about right rooting on your team. Exactly. And
and
and the big problem
go ahead.
well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I do want to comment on this though, but go ahead.
Well, it's that's what's frustrating. Now, occasionally I do a debate. First of all, I've been trained in it. I have the
Right. Right.
um, but I only do it because just like I'm teaching in the university, because it's not so bad that the net overall is just like I'm not doing this anymore. I still think that I have some optimism both in terms of philosophy. It's bad. Our contemporary culture and all this stuff, debates are bad. Like most, I'd say 90% of people like they shouldn't be doing it, and this is, but there's still some good in it. There's still
Yeah.
that's kind of my thoughts, but it's really
The right
mixed.
people. The right people. So to your point, yeah, if you're debating somebody who is also knows how to debate, that's a different thing. I'm talking about debates. The problem I have is the debates in the modern context because they're not normally done under those conditions. If they're done correctly, of course, they're valuable. But the problem is the majority of people that are engaging in them and that support them are there
Yeah,
for the wrong reasons. And there's not, in my experience, it's not that nobody gets positively impacted. I'm sure there are some who are, for sure. But a lot of people, this is another core problem that, I'm not sure we're going to get into too much today, but I think something that's been missed is that people are more moved by their desires than their thoughts today,
yes, yeah,
right? So when somebody goes to a debate, because I've watched, I can't honestly, I don't have the time really to watch most of them, and because what I see anyway for most of them is just it's atrocious. But outside of that, I'll read the comments because I'm curious how it's impacting, right, the cultural impact of these debates. And what I basically see most of the time, almost all the time, is that people think their guy won,
yep,
right?
always.
Regardless,
I know.
it's just like so. I mean, what was really accomplished there? Like, if it's done correctly, to your point, then sure, it can be a good thing. People understand what they're, once again, what they're trying to accomplish. They understand the rules. They're able to remain objective, right, and a bit passionless in the sense of like, they're not gonna, it doesn't turn into a big argument, right, because they understand that there's a process, and most importantly, I think personally, it has to be done. The people going into it have to go into it for the right reason, right? The discernment, the true discernment of truth, right? The real discernment of truth, right? Like I genuinely want to know the truth. And that's why I'm going through this process. So that on the other end of it, I'll have a little bit better idea of what that is. But I don't see that being the intention for the majority of people that engage in these things in the online space.
And it goes back to your point because of the lack of virtue. Now, as
Mm-hmm.
Orthodox, we have something. Not only do we have something similar to what we would call in philosophy virtue ethics, but virtue epistemology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see this even Plato and Aristotle had this idea. It's not simply just intellectually, well, I just got something wrong. Oftentimes it's affected because you didn't have the virtues to,
Mm-hmm.
virtue helps us see the right answer. So let me give you a perfect example of, I work on an orthodox argument that's called the transcendental argument for the existence of God, and people um, find this so confused. Like for me, it's like super like because God's prior to any. I know God in my heart and noetically, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so for me, the argument's really easy. So they go, well, can you put out all the premises? Can you put it in modal logic and do? I'm like, I can do that. Okay, I was trained in. You want me to do that? Do you think that's anybody's ever been like, whoa, there it is? I they get more confused than ever, and I'm like, what do you want? Like, this is so stupid. And I was talking with my godson, who's you know was in the same group as Father Paul Weisman. We've been working on these arguments for 25 years.
Mm.
And I sent him some stuff that, some guy had written like a 42-page thesis, objections. He's like, I don't even understand what. I'm like, it's so stupid, isn't it? It's, they get all bogged down into the philosophical weeds. I call it missing the epistemic forest, the bigger issue for the epistemic tree. Well, if we have this, and what about this theory? And I'm like, you're blind. You literally, you went to school to learn stupid.
Yeah.
One of the professors that was a priest, and he had this Irish accent, he says, he's like, there's all kinds of stupid out there. Some of them you have to go to college to learn. And I'm like, amen. That's so. I mean,
Well,
and you see
yeah.
this in the Gospels too, when Christ is. I mean, he's kind of giving a backhanded Jewish, like, to the Jewish people that even the blind can see, right? Don't you feel like this is what's going on? It's like all y'all went to
Yeah.
school, learned all this stuff, right? About these complicated theories, and you're dumber and blind, more blind than ever. That's what
Well,
I
it's
feel.
it's yeah. Well, this is the thing. This is the other problem I have with especially these Orthodox Catholic debates that you watch,
I just did
particularly
one.
from the
It
Catholic
was
side.
awful.
Yeah, yeah, they're awful. Here's why they're well. There's a lot of reasons they're awful. I mean, we're coming at uh, we're coming to the we're operating with completely different worldviews essentially. So there's that problem already. What matters to the Catholic is
Yeah.
rational truth, right? And what matters is we already hit that. The other problem is this is what like really annoys me and why I just like on a personal level I just can't stomach them is because it's the whole like Christ says it was going to these comments they strain a gnat and swallow a camel,
Yes.
right? When I watch these Catholics and they strain to find this obscure reference of somebody that said something that could be construed as papal supremacy. From our perspective, it's irrelevant because I only have to show one example of where you're wrong,
Yep.
and I destroy your entire argument.
I
So you
know.
can bring me 20 examples. I don't care. It's irrelevant to me because what you don't have is the consensus patrum. You don't have the consensus of the
Yeah.
fathers supporting your position, right? The church has ruled on these things. The church has ruled in its canons that one bishop cannot interfere in the territory of another. And yet they just ignore all of that. They ignore the big things, the essential things, and they focus on these very minor issues, these very minor sources that, once again, don't have real relevance. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing related to that, like underlying it, I should say, is it's this I think good philosophy should make more simple, right? It should draw out those core essences, right? Like to enable us to see that's what I try to do. That's why my videos are very short on these subjects, is because I'm not trying to elaborate these long. Not that there isn't any place for that. There is a time and a place for that. But for the majority of people, we just need to understand basic things to maneuver the world effectively. What education does, this is the point I'm trying to get to. What education does is it complicates what's fundamentally simple when we
Yes.
should be trying to simplify, right? To be able to understand what all these things lead to, right? Even in terms of when you talk about virtue, right? There's books written on the books that are out there, right? Or morality. They all kind of seem to miss the main point. Like, why do we live these things? We live these things because this is how our nature was created to live. It's not arbitrary. It's not this, it's not that, it's not a thousand explanations given for this thing. We're simply living according to our nature, the way our nature was originally devised to be. It's very simple,
I know.
but people want to complicate it, and that's the problem. Like, let's move away from complication. This all this hyper specialization in academia, right? Like, people that learn an incredible amount of information about one specific thing, right? And then they tend to see the whole world through that, right? We
It's
saw this
literally
a
the
lot during COVID.
definition of idiot savant.
Okay, right. That's right.
Isn't that an
Yeah, that's a good
interesting
point.
term, like
Yeah.
a phrase? You have two terms there: savant, which is genius, and
Hmm.
idiot put together.
Yeah.
It's like you're so specialized and smart in your specialization, you're an idiot. Like that's a
Yeah, that's
great.
amazing. It is great. Yeah, I remember the COVID era with all the experts, right? And everybody interpreting the entire world through their one little specialization, and nobody stepping back and saying that's dumb. When you put all this stuff together and you look at it as a whole, these pieces don't fit.
Yeah.
And
And I
anyway,
think
just
what, especially related to the Roman Catholics and a lot of these issues, the reason why this is happening too is their priorities are out of line.
hmm
There's not a first things first. That's the last
right.
conference that I did up here was, or was it the previous? They're all merging together. And I've, like, it's been the fifth year. Like, I'm like, was that 2 years ago or three? But
I hear you.
seek first the kingdom of God. In the Gospel of Matthew, it tells
Hmm.
us, seek first the kingdom of God and the rest will be added to you. So
Hmm.
the problem is they're putting, like you said, it's not that reason or rigor is like, that's a second, third, fourth thing.
Hmm.
And in
Hmm.
light of that, both Bishop Maxim and Metropolitan Jonah, who were speakers at the conference, had said, and they were being hyperbolic to emphasize, we don't have a set of dogmas and doctrines. We have a person. It's Jesus
Hmm.
Christ. That's the
Hmm.
first thing. That's a seek first the kingdom
Hmm.
of God.
Yeah.
And so everything else emerges from that, right? So if you take the emergent phenomenon and put that first as if it's more real, then you're out of whack. And this is really what I see kind of with the Roman Catholics is they're not in touch with reality. So
Hmm.
whether it was when the issue of Pope Francis blessing same-sex couples, um, we all know what he believes. We know what's going on, and
Hmm.
like, and so, well, don't look at that. Look at these really smart Catholic philosophers you're bringing who will abstract. Let's just look at the proposition. I mean, can't the proposition mean? And they go through this, and I really feel that a lot of this is just a distraction and red herring. My last debate with the two Catholic philosophers, Dr. Trent Dortry and Dr. Christopher Thomas Wesky, the same thing. Um, well, let's not actually look and see what's going on in the Vatican. Look at this beautiful semantic theory that I can talk about. And
It's exactly what lawyers do, right? It's the exact thing you see happening in the justice system. Like, why is the justice system so messed up? Right? Because rich people paid lawyers to complicate things that were essentially simple, to distract people from the
yeah,
essential point and get them fixated on things that don't actually matter.
yeah. And so we're not saying for the audience that debate or even law is wrong, but
Of
we
course
see
not.
where it's going wrong.
Yeah.
When it does go wrong, we're asked the question, why? Because you didn't put first things first.
Hmm.
Christ is not first. A person is not first. The church is not first. We have an ethos and we have a personal God that's a trinity. When that's
Hmm.
put first, and that's what you're talking about, that's how we acquire virtue. Then the virtue allows me to do debate, allows me to see reality
Hmm.
correctly.
Hmm.
So, we have a lot of young guys in Discord, and they might see myself or Jay like, oh, they're really successful. I want that right away. It's like, well, you can't have it.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. You're
That's right.
you're a child.
That's right. That's
Like,
it. Yeah,
we got to
exactly.
work us on the fundamental. They'll bring up questions like, "Whoa, Palamas says this," and what about the essence? And I'm like, first things first. Let's get you going into a catechesis program
That's it.
and read some of the basics, right? Now,
Mhm.
anybody in any other aspect of life should understand this, right? Well, I want to lift all this weight, or I want to actually be a heart. I love hearts. So can I let me at it? It's like you can't. You're gonna kill somebody.
Well, and we
So
we understand. Well, we see why it happens, right? Because to be fair to them as well, I mean, I get it. Is they've been sold a bill of goods. They've grown up in a world that has, like you were saying, has denied truth, has killed truth,
yeah.
and now somehow they've been exposed to it, and
Mm-hmm.
they want it wholeheartedly, right? Once
Yeah.
again, one problem leads to another problem, right? One extreme leads to the other extreme, right? And that's what bounces on. And hopefully, what we hope and pray for, we get it all the time with our catechumens, that they have enough of the right reason to be there, that they eventually work through this,
Yeah.
can put in the turn time, get the maturity, acquire the wisdom to eventually be able to do those things. But like you said, they're just not there. They can't. You don't start there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I get it too, especially when you find the truth. Especially these young.
Hmm.
I work a lot with the Z generation, and
Hmm.
a lot of people like to criticize them. They use the term ortho bro. By the way, I came up with that as a term of endearment
Okay.
like 8, 9 years ago because I was working
Okay.
with the other priests in Southern California with the Young Adults League and stuff like that, and we would go to
Hmm.
liturgy and vespers and have talks together. And I was like, well, what do we call these young? Well, they're brothers. They're Orthodox brothers. So, and then it got appropriate and used in a negative sense. And now people are like, well, ortho bros are the biggest threat. And I'm like, no, they're not.
No, they're
They're
not.
just
No, they're
young
not.
people. Like you,
Yeah.
just have some patience,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I remember what it was
Exactly.
like to be young. But even worse than that, have some compassion because they are coming out of a world of chaos. It's not like
Totally.
you and I, Father, grown up in the 80s and
I
90s,
know.
you
I
know,
know.
that you have all this relativism, nihilism, feminism, all the gay skittles stuff, and
Hmm.
they see something, they see that it's wrong, and they found orthodoxy. God bless them.
Hmm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
they're immature, just like you and I were when we were
Hmm.
kids,
Absolutely.
and you're
Yeah. For sure.
reactionary, right? But you haven't
Hmm.
acquired the virtues yet. Like Aristotle says, it's
Hmm.
easy to be angry. It's the hard part is being angry at the right time, at the right proportion, in the right
Hmm.
situation. And that's
Hmm.
part of as clergy, our responsibility. It's that if you want to be healed, as Christ says, you want to be healed. We've got a program for that. We can help you.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
but
Exactly.
I get upset that people are critical. Like the biggest problem is our youth. I'm like, no, God
No.
bless them. Like,
No. Here's the
and they
benefit that
change
they
pretty
have.
fast too.
Yeah. Yeah. They do, and
Like
they're open to the truth. Here's the thing. So this is what they have. There is hope. I see hope in Gen Z.
yeah,
Because they genuinely want the truth. I know there's always this generation bashing, and I'm not sure what to think about millennials, so we'll leave that on the shelf for the
yeah,
moment. but Gen Z gives me hope.
yeah,
Gen Z gives me hope. They come in, and yes, they have a lot of not real zeal, but you know what I'm saying? Like they want to do the right things, and they're open to the truth, and they
yeah,
embrace the truth
yeah,
easily and wholeheartedly. And once again, it's a matter of prudence, a matter of temperance, right? That's where the issue really kind of starts to come in. But being well intentioned, at least the ones I've dealt with, the majority of them, they like you said, they will make those changes if you work with them, if you give them the time that they deserve, right, to work with them. As people, I mean, I don't know your mentoring, who mentored you, but I've certainly had people over life who have taken the time, because like you said, I was the same way. I was a big time Catholic apologist. I mean, I remember having debates with people overseas. I mean, I was just that was my thing, was a Catholic. And
mm,
not to toot my own horn, I was pretty good at it. But when I moved past that, it ceased to be a priority for me. And now
yeah,
now I come back into the scene and I see how it's weaponized. Right? It's weaponized for most people to create more dissension, to widen that gap rather than to close it, as it rightfully should. A good debate, like you said, Father, should bring people together. Kind of like
yeah,
back in the day, when we would fight, right? When men would fight in the we
yeah. And
usually
then they
usually end up
hug
as
after.
friends
Yeah, they're
afterwards. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You'd end up as friends afterwards, right? It's like
yeah,
we got to work this out, and then when you're done, like there's a respect that comes from that. And debate should be the same way. I mean, there should come, even if you don't end up agreeing, like you have a little more appreciation for where they're coming from, and you also have greater depth of your own position. That's what a real debate should be. And I'd love to see the world get back to that style of debate.
Yeah. And that was one thing that was good about Thomas Aquinas colleges. They were able to provide an environment in which
Hmm.
that could be done in a healthy way. That's not to
Yes,
say that's,
exactly.
uh, I remember this one. I've always not liked bullies, by the way.
Hmm.
I've always want to, stand up for the most vulnerable. And
Hmm.
yeah, there were times where you probably remember I'm like, there's some real jerks in class sometimes. They're really smart and
Yeah.
arrogant.
Yep.
And one guy he would always lean back in his chair. And we were going over Augustine.
Uh-huh.
Um, Interesting enough, about infant baptism. And
Mm.
Augustine's like, yeah, they basically go to hell, like the unbaptized.
Yeah.
And so people were rightfully upset by that. And this guy was like, get over it. The babies are burning in hell whether you like it or not. And I'm like, I turned over to him. I'm like, I will
Wow.
flip you back on your chair in the middle of class if you don't know. I'm like, you might be able to outsmart me. I can beat you up. How about
That's
that?
right.
It
That's right.
shut him up. I'm like, I can. And
It's like those
so, but
bumper
I was
stickers.
sticking up for I'm like, he was picking on
Yeah.
people. He was being a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No, I know. They weaponize. Look, that's the thing. It's all intellectual pride, right? A lot of for them is just intellectual pride, which is a sin of the devil. I mean, like, pride is a sin of the devil. I mean, this is when they take and they become arrogant. They don't realize, right? If you're not speaking the truth in love, right? If that's not what animates you, is a true, genuine care for that soul, then what you're doing is almost certainly damaging to you and everyone else. Like
yeah,
that's what people forget. It
yeah,
isn't just about lobbing these arrows, right? And oh, hey, this hit or that hit. It's not a game for people. It's a game, and that's the problem. When it takes on this blood sport spirit, that is problematic because you're missing the point of doing this in the first place.
yeah,
The purpose is to discern the truth, is to
yeah,
extract it, right? Is to be able to mine, right? We're miners trying to find these nuggets of wisdom that we can use to be better human beings, to ultimately, as Orthodox Christians, to have these things help us move us toward theosis,
yeah,
right? And if it's not that, then it's not good. It's not good.
yeah,
It's probably bad. It's probably going to harm you
yeah.
and
I mean,
others,
what a simple question. What do you want in your
right?
life? I just, I ask people that all the
Yeah.
time. Like, you get distracted with, like, what do you actually want? Do you want to be here? Do you want to have just a bunch of more facts in your head? Well, those are called fantasies between your ears,
That's right.
as Father Russell says. I always quote Father Russell. Well, he's got some really great he's got some great one-liners. Like
Okay.
when we're doing church tours, people ask me if we're a Bible-based church. Absolutely not. And people are like, "Oh, all the Protestants, we're the church the Bible's based on." I'm like, "Yeah, Father
That's
Father
awesome.
Russell one-liners." Um, what is
That's great.
what is all this stuff? Like, what do you want? Like more facts? You know, I remember I got in a disagreement with my sister-in-law once, and she was like, what the problem with the world is people just aren't, educated enough and haven't gone to college. I'm like, oh yeah, because that's the world for you. We just
Yeah,
don't have enough
yeah,
facts, propositions in our head. You know what I mean? So
right.
it's like, is people should, and I'm gonna tie this back in. I always tell my students I'm such bad ADD that one thing you'll learn about somebody who has ADD, the shortest distance between two intellectual points is never a straight line. It's a long, windy road, but I will always come back to it. Why
That's it.
truth actually matters is in is philosophy done well should encourage introspection, right? To slow down and think about like a question like that. What do you want in life? How many people have just stopped and asked that? Like, what do I want to be? And what, uh, what do I want? I had a wonderful uh, confession not too long ago, and Father Russell says, because I realize I'm like, that's, I mean, all the sins can be basically that seem like confessing. I'm like, I got distracted again. I wasn't
Mm,
like, I'm a hypocrite. I know that I say, let us be attentive more than anybody. I'm the least attentive person. And I'm constantly distracted by the demons who are just like, look over
mm,
here, look, and then I fall
yeah,
into sin.
yeah.
And whether it's anger or whatever the sin that may be, it's like I didn't have watchfulness. I wasn't paying attention
Hmm.
and attending. Um, and so, Father Russell says, what do you want to be? I'm like, I have a very clear idea what I want to be. Let me start what I don't want to be. I don't want to be known as the person, oh, that deacon's so great as long as everything goes his way and life's good.
Hmm.
I want to be known
Hmm.
as I want to achieve a spot before I die that says, gosh, there's nothing they can do to, they could torture him, he could lose everything.
Hmm.
And he says, blessed be the name of the Lord.
Hmm.
That's, and Father says, good, don't let anything distract you from that.
Hmm.
That's an introspection. I think everybody, how many people have just asked, even got to the first step, what do I want to be? What do I want?
Hmm.
We're just too distracted and caught up. And,
Hmm.
I think Blaise Pascal is one of the closest philosophers to orthodoxy in a kind of mindset. And he says if it wasn't for all these distractions, nothing would be more clear than God and his existence.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's where we're just like, well, like, just stop. And philosophy should, done well, ask those great questions. Who am I? What am I supposed to be? What do I want? Then once you got that, don't let anything distract you
Hmm.
from that. But
Hmm.
I read something last year, something like 15 to 20% of people report not only not having an inner monologue, but which I thought just meant thinking. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense. 20,
Yeah, they don't think at all.
but the same amount reported they didn't have people didn't have introspection. I'm like, oh, that makes sense too. Like that.
Hmm.
So you know, as bad as philosophy departments can do, like they're at least even the very worst I think there's at least still an ethos in the departments to get them to introspect and think about stuff. Um, Unfortunately, um, the other stuff can, override that. Um, Especially all the wokeism and like, I mean, all the departments. Like I was looking at my department at University College stuff. It's like there was probably one professor that might have like did something in feminism. I'm like, you have like five of them now, and they're just
Hmm.
stacked in gender studies. I mean, even at the Catholic college, we have gender study and feminist professors in the theology
Yeah.
department, and I'm like, joke, dude. So, like, that's one of the problems too. And like you said, not starting the right, like, at the right place. You start be
No.
like, well, I just choose whatever class I want, and now I'm gonna do symbolic logic or phenomenology or some. Why? Did you ask yourself? I'm gonna ask my students start next week's. Why are you here?
Hmm.
I ask this actually every semester. Why'd you take this course?
Hmm.
Um, oh, because we found out you're a hilarious professor. I'm like, okay. So you like, I'm a comedian. Okay, I can work with that. That at least I can teach truth through comedy. I could do that. Um, the more troublesome one is that because I had to, my requirement, like, I'm like, okay, um, they haven't even thought about. They have no idea what philosophy is, why they're there. But there's hope. We work. I mean, there's very few students that don't come out of it. Um, like I tell them, I'm like, I just want you to be more than when you came in. Isn't that nice? Don't we? And that kind of takes it out of just the purely rationalistic, intellectual realm. I don't want you to have more facts in your head. I
No.
want you to be I'd love to have you come out of here as a better person. That's virtue. That's what you're talking about.
Hmm.
We're more limited as professors in the university than we are as clergy. Like, I think people when they come in to the church, really, most of them do like, I want to be healed. I want to be better.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's easier to work with. It's a bit more difficult where it's like, I mean, it would be like saying, "Why are you here, Father?" You ask one of your parishioners, "Why are you here?" I'm here on court order from the. I got in trouble, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I think we work with it, but it's gonna be hard if you don't want to actually be here." Anyways, other thoughts and questions about that?
Well, just yeah. So a couple things. I mean, I think you're right. People there's a lot of mechanisms in our society that would seem to be in place specifically to distract us, right? I mean, it seems like the whole modern society is engineered to keep us
Yeah,
distracted and not asking the bigger, deeper questions of the why, right? So that you already have that going, and of course, to supply all the amusements and the pleasures and the, all these other things that go along with that. And I think there's one other component we haven't hit on today yet, which is the problem of will, right? People forget that a lot of the error, I believe strongly, isn't just a problem of wrong ideas. I mean, that contributes, but it's the problem of the will, right? You can convince people. I'm sure you've had this situation where you can have that calm discussion. Somebody, you're talking about something, and you can get them to agree with something that's very reasonable, but then they reject the conclusion because they don't want to.
yeah,
Even as a high schooler, I was involved in. I don't know if you remember Operation Rescue. It was an anti-abortion thing in
yep.
the
I
'80s,
remember
and
that.
eventually got shut down because they made it a felony, and to petition to people forget that history. But I was there, and I was I was in high school. So what they had me do is I was the police liaison, so I didn't get into serious trouble, which I wouldn't have been able to do all the things I did after that because I would have been a felon. So I mean, they were looking out for me at the time. They assigned me to be but I did get to debate with some of the people coming to the abortion clinic, and this is one of the things. This is even pre Thomas Aquinas College, that kind of even was sort of like preliminary. It gave me a sense of like the significance of truth and how it all works. I got the gal to agree to the following, and this is before I'd been trained. This is just the way my mind worked. I got her to agree that what was in her womb was a human life, and then I got her to agree that she was destroying what was in her womb. So of course, the natural conclusion is she's destroying a human life. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
my choice, my body. I can do what I want. Right? She willfully blinded herself to the truth that was certainly evident to her. Like, it's not that, I mean, people have just intuitively, like, or inherently, I should say, inherently the ability to understand cause and effect. You understand that I have to put my keys in the ignition and turn it, if you have an older car, um, in order for it to run. Like, people are capable of grasping that. People are capable of grasping the logic that was there. It's that they choose not to
Yep,
accept it. And that's a big part of this is the will. And it comes back to, what we're talking about, the virtue,
yep.
right? Like the will has to be open to the truth when you receive it. If it's turned against it, it isn't going to matter. All the discussion in the world isn't going to help you. And I think that's your struggle in the classes. Somebody doesn't have the right will, the right reason for being there, and the right intentions. It's going to be hard to work against that.
And they're actually better than online people. Like online people and atheists and Protestants and part of that's just the depersonalization of the medium, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, one of the things that I came to understand, and I love writing philosophy papers, proving the existence of God. I love that stuff. I'll get really rigorous about and apart from a few people, the people asking for a rigorous art, they're not like you said. You can lead them through the proof, and they're not like, oh yeah. They're like, they reject it. That's what I said. The problem isn't
Mm-hmm.
intellectual. Your problem
Mm-hmm.
isn't because, well, I just didn't think through it carefully enough. The problem is a problem of the will. It's rebellion.
Yep.
Like you
Yep.
don't want to accept that. And the fact that all of these, I just brought one of my students from my online class brought this up. He's like, the fact that these atheists spend so much time on your argument, doesn't that say something that, like, yeah, if it was
Yeah.
stupid, like, well, it
They wouldn't
shows
waste
to
the time
me
with it.
it's not intellectual. It's a like they
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
It's torment to them, which is kind of a vision of hell. And by the
Mm-hmm.
way, I want to qualify. I wish I could call it AA because I believe that the argument that I give is not actually an argument. Arguments are secondary. It's a rehab program. The argument I give is the gospel. God is
Mm-hmm.
first in all things. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's
That's
great.
what my
That's great.
transcendental argument has always been,
Mm-hmm.
right? Before
Mm-hmm.
logic, before morale, like he, right, spiritually, epistemically, is number one, without
Mm-hmm.
which there is nothing. Like you can't,
Mm-hmm.
that's just the gospel. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why can't they understand it? Because they've habituated themselves through vice and a corruption of the will to not see the truth. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
Jews, that's why Christ says, even the blind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even the blind man could see.
Yeah.
That's like, what's the matter with
Yeah.
your own people? Like my own people, you can't see. That's what's going on. So I really think the arguments that I'm giving is, I can't just, like you said, it's not going to just be giving another syllogism or something like that. The problem is you don't understand it, right? And not because you lack more intellectual, understanding. It's because you've got yourself in a bad way of thinking about stuff because of vices, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to accept. So we don't
Exactly.
need another, in this sense, another kind of scholastic,
Mm-hmm.
seminar. Well, we'll just go over the argument over and over again. What you need is a rehab program.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really think about the Orthodox Church. It isn't a set of dogma, it's a rehab. We're all messed up intellectually in terms of our will, physically, and the good news is we have a rehab program that if you work the step, if you want it, like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
openness, you could be sent in court order to a rehab, and like, well, he did all the steps, why didn't it work? Because he didn't want it. He didn't want to be
Mm-hmm.
healed, right? So we need to, and that's really difficult, subtly, to get somebody to start to introspect so they open up. I mean, true therapy is that way, right? Open up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Christ said, I love the Aramaic word epitah, be open, like
Mm-hmm.
listen, be open. Can you see? Um, that's hard to just subtly. I think it takes a relationship. I think it takes an investment. Some of the people that trained me in apologetics, when I was I got into apologetics and philosophy at 18 years old. They told me, and they were Christians. They said, my pagan name is Eric, by the way. I didn't. I was given a pagan Norse name, um, but they said, Eric, um, nobody's going to listen to your argument unless they know that you love them and care about them. I'm like, Amen. Isn't that true?
That's good. Yeah, that is good. That's really good.
Nobody's going
That's
to
very
care
true.
unless you show
Yeah.
that you actually care and like I have an investment. That's what makes the classroom easier than online. I have no idea who these people are. Like
Mm-hmm.
90% of the people online. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the classroom I do, I spend an entire semester. I'm at the college with them even after the semester. I have an investment in their lives, and I
Mm-hmm.
can demonstrate to them. I'm like, I actually love you and care for you. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
intellect. So that makes it a little bit easier. And of course, it's much easier in the context of the church too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the one positive thing, I kind of like to look at. I always like to look at the whole picture, right? So we've been, you know, discussing the challenges and some of the things that help. I would say one maybe positive thing that we, or not just positive, but like hope, something to give hope, is the fact that I believe that humility is the foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are finding they're being humble because they're being crushed. Like the one interesting thing about like the one thing that gives hope for a better for people coming into the faith, why I think they're coming into the faith, and how I could see things shifting in the right direction in time, maybe in a massive way even, is just those who realize that their life is an utter disaster, right? Who are cognizant enough to realize that this can't be it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think this is the underlying psychology of a lot of the people coming in. And the requisite humility is to say, look, I don't have the answers. I need to come to the church, right, to find these answers. And that's where then everything else we're talking about, because they're still going to have doubts that they're trying to work through, and because they've been taught the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing here in our ministries, I think, is a help to that. It can start to help to reformat their thinking, so to speak, so that they approach the world in the right ways. Because there is a connection. While I think it is the heart that leads the mind more than the mind leading the heart, there is still an interplay between the two, right? And so I think that's where there's value here. People are coming into being humbled. We have to be humble. We have to understand our limitations, and that's something that is, I guess, easy for me because I have a lot to be humble about. A lot to realize that I'm, a lot of opportunities, a lot of humiliations, a lot of things that I've done wrong in the world. And at any point that I start to think that I'm something, it's very easy for me to regain my perspective. No, you are nothing, and so I really try in my own ministry to, in that sense, to be on there, because we're co-strugglers, right? That's one of these beautiful things about Orthodoxy. I love, clergy. Unlike the Catholics, like traditional Catholics, they're very much the priest there's this aristocracy, right? There's a standoffishness between the Catholic priests. That's very off-putting, for a lot of people. For me, I didn't necessarily care. I'd been in the Marine Corps and all that, so I was used to that. But I think for somebody who's coming into our church is broken, they need to understand that, look, their priest is broken too. We understand, we not only sympathize, we empathize with what you're going through, because we've either gone through it or still going through it, right, in our own way. And it's just beautiful. And people are very responsive to that, I find. They say that's one of the things I love about Orthodoxy is when, because we have a lot of people that have looked at Catholicism too, and that's what they'll say. One of the things that led them to Orthodoxy, or to stick with Orthodoxy instead of the Catholic catechumen program, was this understanding that we're all co-strugglers. And
well, Joseph interviewed you, and he mentioned that, because remember, he was Roman Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what helped me. When he, that was about trauma from Catholicism, and I would say, and I don't know how, once again, I wasn't trying to. I know you answered. You did an interview. I started watching. It's very good. The interview you did, by the way, the Ethics of Beauty, on the Ethics of Beauty, very good. Appreciated that. And but from my perspective, what I was trying to get across, because this is something that's important to me, is once again to realize that we don't warrant, part of healing from trauma, part of being able to forgive, right? Because that's really the basics, right? To be able to heal from the trauma of things that people have done to us, right, is to be able to forgive them. And to be able to forgive them, we have to understand that, in one sense, this is all part of the divine plan, right? To accept providence as it is, to accept the fact that in a fallen world, fallen things are going to happen, and not to blame anyone for it, to accept it for what it is, to obviously to surrender ourselves to the grace of God, right? To surround ourselves with that grace. I think of it in terms of analogy, sometimes in my really desperate moments, was just mentally laying myself at the feet of the Savior or the Theotokos and just begging for help, begging for forgiveness, right? And this is where healing comes from. It comes from that. It comes from acknowledging that our profound need for Christ in all things, that our entire existence, all our abilities, everything we have and can do, derive from Him. And in that context, right, that ontology, right, that cosmology of God being at the beginning, being the beginning and end of all things, right, that circle, when we see life as that way, we're just a part of that circle, then all these other things that people do to us or events or that, they cease to have the same significance, right? And so I just look back on my cat on all the trauma. I've had a ton of it. I had a ton of, like most people, right? We all have things we've gone through. I tried really to look at it in that context and to understand that all of those things have made me who and what I am now. Like I needed to learn something from that. I didn't enjoy it, but it taught me something that God knew I needed to know, right? And so I hope that that's the point that came across. That I certainly wasn't trying to like be, I don't know the word for it, harsh or something with people. It's just I know for myself if I have expectations, right? A big thing that was taught to me when I came into Orthodoxy is the letting go of expectations.
Yes.
That expectations really are idols in a sense. We have an idea how things are supposed to be that is different from what God's will is, and so we're essentially creating an idol. Right? We're worshiping that idol of what we think, like we think we know better than God. God, you should give me this. You should have let me have this or that. And that's where all the pain and suffering comes
That's where
from.
the
Is
real suffering, you know,
yeah.
I've told most people know this, but we're going on 18 years in our marriage with my wife and I. 10 years of that was she had a total and complete disability, like absolutely
Mm,
excruciating pain. It was awful.
Lord have mercy.
Um, and before I became Orthodox, that wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it was me, that I
Mm,
just wouldn't accept. Like I wasn't open, like
hmm
you were saying, like God, why are you it was always blaming something, right?
Yeah. No
So
good.
we talk about a changing of the mind, right? In
hmm
terms of like repentance, I wasn't there. Like, so my
hmm
suffering was me. That was the worst part of
hmm
it. The anguish and the hell that I
hmm
was. It was not the physical and the circumstantial.
We create it.
It was, and then you'd mentioned too, the way out of that
hmm
is that God's. So the problem is we want to like say, I'm gonna do another Father Russell one-liner. You go get him, Jesus. You go fix it, right? Well, you're not fixing it, so now I'm mad and there's this evil. Well, first of all, you said they were called to be co-workers. There's a real acknowledgement that the world is not the way God initially intended.
Of
Um,
course.
And so we want to blame God for that and blame everybody else. That's why I read
hmm
that Dostoevsky line. The only way to salvation, this is with the priest in the Brothers Karamazov, is that
hmm
I see that I'm responsible for all the world's evils and sins. That's
hmm
that like changing of the mind, right? That's what
hmm
real repentance means. And then nothing can touch you. Like now the
hmm
garden lost becomes the garden restored, and then it's not. That's what God's calling us to. It's like it is messed
hmm
up. Humanity messed it up, but
hmm
come help. Let's work together. We'll fix it
hmm
together. And part of
hmm
that is the changing of the mind, right?
hmm
Bringing back paradise. Even through the mindset. And that's what in the Ethics of Beauty said that there's only two ways. So like you talked about providence. It's not seeing it providentially that God's allowing that for some reason,
hmm
right? Because He
hmm
knows that we can work together to bring out to fix it, to bring a greater good. And so, you know,
And it's in suffering that we grow. Let's just be clear about that. It's in suffering that we grow. God
exactly,
allows these sufferings because that's how we grow. We grow through suffering.
exactly. Yeah, you're not going to, and there's certainly no resurrection without the crucifixion for Christ's work
Exactly.
for us. And so
Exactly.
don't run from your crosses. You got a great opportunity. I was talking to counseling to, parishioners, and they were telling me about something that's really bad that they're going through. And I'm like, you're right, it's bad. Now you've got an
hmm
opportunity to become a man, to
Exactly.
actually shine and to actually grow. So count it as a blessing to
hmm
that, otherwise you wouldn't grow. You would be in an infantile state or worse. And so, you know, that there's something really profound, yeah, but that we get to be co-workers with God and just be open to be like, I don't know why these things um, happen, but I trust God. And
Mm-hmm.
notice that's not you don't gain that through an intellectual. You gain
Mm-hmm.
that through a life lived with somebody, particularly the saints, the
Mm-hmm.
Theotokos, and the Holy Trinity. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
asked me, do you have any doubts about the existence of God in Orthodoxy? I'm like, absolutely not. I did when I had doubts about Christianity and stuff and which religion prior because it was all dependent on me and my own mind. My own, like
Mm-hmm.
you'd said, this is the way reality's got to be, or this has to. Well, I'm fallible. Like you said, I made a
Mm-hmm.
mess of my life when
Mm-hmm.
I tried to rule over it myself and be my own God. Um, so something changed when we came into Orthodoxy, right? I humbled myself and be like, I'm a mess and I need to be healed. And then it was a slow process of developing a relationship with the saints, the Theotokos, and the Holy Trinity. Once you know them, like I have no doubt. It's like somebody asked me, "Do you have doubts that your wife is such and such or blah blah blah?" Like absolutely not. I've lived with her. Like I know her, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
Eastern sense of no. It's not a
Yeah.
proposition. So you actually have doubts and don't know when you have the kind of Western understanding of propositional. You want to know
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy in the chat struggles with the Trinity. You want to know the reason why you're struggling with it is you're approaching it in the wrong priority.
Mm-hmm.
Be silent and know that he is God. Enter and you will grow
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship and there will be no more doubts. Then
Mm-hmm.
the mind intellectually will know because it's being
Mm-hmm.
informed, as you said, Father, by the heart. But that's hard work. Relationships take time and effort, but God's calling us to enter into that, and we will be
Yeah.
changed, and we're at peace.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't have any doubt. Like I know, like I see miracles and the saints doing stuff all the time. I'm like, I'm filled with joy. I'm not shocked. I'm like, yeah, it's work. Like I know them. So just spend time with them. That's all we're asking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that. Then that ultimately that heart has to be changed. The heart has to be changed. We have to change what we love, right? That's when we talk about the transfiguration of the heart. It's a transition of loves, right?
Yes.
Before you come into the faith, you love all these other things. Oh, I love fast cars. I love this, whatever. Like we can still appreciate that or whatever, but I don't love those things now. I like to shoot. I have guns.
Mm.
I don't love my guns anymore. There was a time in my life I could say I probably did, because for whatever reason, because they were a false substitute
Yeah.
for something. And now, my loves by the faith, by the power of God, it helps us to move from the things that aren't significant to the things that are, right? It's that realignment. It's that shift, once again, that transfiguration of, you know, loving this thing over here and now purifying that love to something better, ideally to what we should love. And I think that's the process of the Christian life is really that conversion of loves, right? Because I plan to talk a lot more about that on my channel, but, the disposition with which we approach things is, I think, the last piece of this, right? And once again, it falls back to that will. But somebody can do right. This is something that, as a Catholic, that you don't really get a sense about, and I talked about it in that video. It's for Orthodox Christians, it's not just what we do, right, but why we do it, right, and the spirit in which we do it. And you can do the right things, and sometimes, yeah, of course, sometimes just we're just having to push through because we don't want it, we don't feel like it or whatever. But ultimately, when we're living, I think the saints, for the most part, all of their faculties were in alignment, right? There wasn't necessarily, at the heights there, each component of their being, we are called to utilize in the worship of God, right? And when somebody reaches that point, they reach that point of theosis, that's what it is. They're every part of them is in alignment towards that end, and that's the goal. That's the ideal to strive for.
Yeah. And then what's amazing, I always love, then they're truly human. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
I think about Christ on the cross, Ecce Homo,
Hmm.
behold the man.
Hmm.
It is finished. The creation of man is a project. Um, Let us be creating man in our image. and it's not fulfilled until on the cross. And Thomas Hopko has the word of the cross, like it's a great. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's who in the incarnation, in the hypostatic union, we get a vision of the man. And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
good, there it is. That's where I'm supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not complete as a human being. I am not a man, a human, until I'm there. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what theosis is. And then I also like like I love seeing all the terms that we use connected together. For example, we're Catholic, katoholos. To me,
Mm-hmm.
when I hear that word, and we could talk about the different nuance of the word, but to me, it's everything in its right place in a
Mm-hmm.
whole. Like you said, that everything is aligned, and our prior to that, and in our lives right now, things are out of whack. Like pieces aren't
Yes.
where they're supposed to go, right? And the
Right.
saints and theosis is it's all put back together, right?
Yes.
There's
Mm-hmm.
the whole, there's the man right there, and we strive to be like that. Yeah,
And we're living once again that basis of all the virtue we talked about, man living as he was created to be, right? According to the, and so all these things come back together. It's beautiful. It's just, it's all of it is so beautiful. It is
yeah,
so beautiful. And I wish that's one of the profound tragedies is that what the world is really missing out on is also the profound beauty that goes along with these
yes,
things. If they only knew, if they only were presented these things in the right way and were able to acquire them with the right disposition, they don't realize how much better their lives would be as
I
well.
know.
Like that's the huge tragedy. It's anyway.
It reminds me of like an addict. Let's take like an alcoholic.
Yeah.
They think um they're having a great time. Life's great. Um Talk to an alcoholic who's been sober for a while, be like, was your life great? They come to their senses. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't. Isn't that interesting? So
Hmm.
people don't know. That's why, once we've tasted how good the Lord is, like,
Hmm.
of course I fall into sins and stuff, but like, I can never picture, like, it's a terrible life apart from, like,
Hmm.
I would never return to
Hmm.
a life like that because I've come to my
Yeah.
senses. I know what that's like. It's awful. And we just,
Yes.
like, if people could just come taste and see that the Lord is is good, and the life in the Lord is so good too. I mean, you just, and that's what we attempt to do. It'll give you an argument, right? That's not gonna. You gotta taste it, right? That you gotta really experience God to know how good He really is. Um,
Indeed.
there was something else I was gonna say, piggybacking on that too. Um, anyways, I forgot. Go ahead, Father. Come
That's
back to
right.
me later.
No, I think we've covered the subject quite well. I've got anything that I wanted to get out of the discussion. I think it's been there. I think it's been great. Really really appreciated the time here with you, Father. And I'm not sure if you have any final comments you want to make, but I think I've said and heard everything I needed to for
I'm
it.
gonna read some super chats and questions that
Hmm.
people
Okay.
have, and then we can end. But yeah, that tied it together um, really well.
Hmm. Cool.
Theocracy Enjoyer sends $5. I asked an atheist what their meta ethical. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. This always happens. There's a word that triggers.
No.
Um, and I'm gonna say it in Latin. So everybody turn their Latin translator AI Fitbit on in your ear that Elon Musk installed, and bonum veritas pulcherum, the good, the true, and the beautiful. You'd mentioned that these are often what we call transcendentals, and they're
Hmm.
not separate. Um, I see them as like almost like Venn diagrams, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of concentric circles. They're distinct, but they're interrelated in a almost like in a fabric. So the
Mm-hmm.
good implies the true, and the true the good, and the true the beautiful, and by virtue of that, the good the beautiful. That's part of the problem in modern society is that modernity is fragmented. So we can't see
Mm-hmm.
how these things are brought together, but it's like you said, it's and a dear friend of mine, Abbas Emiliani, it's made the same kind of point. It's not true unless it's spoken in love, and it's not love unless it's true. Do you see this? These things are all connected
Mm-hmm.
together. That's what
Mm-hmm.
orthodoxy is. And you know what heresy
Mm-hmm.
is? When you break something apart
Mm-hmm.
and separate it. It's idolatry too, right? We take a piece of the whole and something that's good, and then treat it as if it were God, the uncreated itself, or as if it were the whole. So, of course, we can look at other religions and Roman Catholic and be like, yeah, there's good stuff. Like, there's truth in it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a whole. It's not going to heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be healed
Mm-hmm.
is to be made whole. So, how could you be
Mm-hmm.
made whole if you're working with parts? You can't.
Murdering to dissect it, right? Wasn't it Charles DeConnick that said that? To murder, we murder to
Yeah, oh,
dissect.
that's great.
There's
Yeah.
others that have said it too. I think Wordsworth had said it as well. But
In the lifeless world of biology. Yeah, that was a great.
mm-hmm.
Anyways, let
Mm-hmm.
me read some more. I was starting to read that person's chat, and then, but thank you for the person who said the super chat in because it helped. Speaking of anamnesis, to remember, I asked an atheist what their meta-ethical justification was in their worldview, and they said meta-ethics don't exist. Wouldn't that be ironic? Well, there you go. Once you don't like something, just say it doesn't exist. How well is that going to work out for your life? Just for your honor, I can't be convicted of this because that never happened. Thank you, Theocracy Enjoyer. Eric Vigilant, 4.99. God bless you, Father Deacon Ananias and Father Sebastian. Well, the Lord bless. Thank you. Scott, $2. Beautiful conversations and blessings. We have some other ones too here. No, that was it. Um, I read all the super chats. So I want to thank you guys for your support. I want to thank Father for joining us. That was a wonderful conversation. What an important
Thank God.
topic too, and also just relevant to what we're going through
Indeed.
in this day and age. And it gives us hope, doesn't it? There's a way out of this chaos, and we can be healed if we want. And pray for us. Don't forget to pray for your clergy.
Indeed. Please.
Yeah, the last thing the
Really need
enemy
it.
wants is for us to heal people. So
Exactly.
the demons attack us. Really?
Oh yeah.
What do they say
Good times.
when you're ordained a deacon? You get a demon assigned to you. When you're ordained to the priest, 3, and a bishop, like God knows how many.
Legion.
A nest. They just send a hive
Yes.
nest of demons off. Yeah.
Oh goodness.
So, Father, would you grace us with a blessing and prayer from the Lord, and we'll end.
It is truly meet to bless thee, the Theotokos, ever blessed and most blameless and mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, beyond compare, more glorious than the seraphim, who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word, the very Theotokos, thee do we magnify. Amen. And may the Lord
Amen.
bless. All
Thank you,
right.
Father.
Thank,
Looking
thank
forward
you so much,
to,
Father.
yeah, looking forward to. Make sure you guys find it's in the bio. Father's YouTube, it's in there. Make sure you subscribe. Watch what he's doing. Support his ministry. This is really important. I totally believe in what you're doing, Father. We
Thank you,
need
Father.
that.
Thank God.
And so my prayers for you and your ministry and everybody, your family and everybody at the parish.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And likewise for you, for your father. I know you've been at this a lot longer, and so I do appreciate you, giving the time on this discussion and sharing the things that you've learned, that by God's grace, the wisdom that you've been able to acquire over the years. And hopefully we can do it again by
Amen.
God's grace. All
May
right.
be blessed.
Glory to
Yeah.
God.
All
Glory to
right.
God. May be
Bye,
blessed.
everybody.
All right.
God bless you.